Dr. Mache here, and welcome to Ask Dr. Mache. And we are here live, and tonight we're going to be talking about perimenopause, 4 things that you ought to know. And I want to share this information with you, and I'm going to start off by speaking with you about perimenopause for a few minutes, maybe 5-6 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. I'm doing this as a weekly show because I really want to get as much information to you as I can about midlife, and I want you to, if you have friends that might benefit, there's still time to ask them or invite them to come on and join you. Bring your friends, bring your questions, and get some answers, and we will spend some time talking in this particular instance about perimenopause. So let's hop in and begin by saying, what is perimenopause? Because it's confusing to people. So perimenopause is that window of time that leads up to menopause. Peri is like a perimeter. It's the time around menopause. And the window of time can last up to 10 years, but the most intense time is generally within about 4 years of menopause. And remember, menopause is defined as your final menstrual period, the last one you'll ever have. So if you're having irregular periods or periods that are regular and you're having symptoms, well, that's maybe perimenopause, but it's not menopause. When does it happen? What are the ages that it happens? Well, here's the thing that's so important to know. Menopause itself, and therefore perimenopause, isn't about age. It's about transition. And the transition is kind of like the transition that happened in puberty when you were going from not having periods through irregular periods, then into the reproductive years to regular periods and hormones that are quite balanced. Now you're going to go from regular periods and balanced hormones into unbalanced hormones and irregular periods and into menopause. So that second part, that is what perimenopause is all about. And as it was in puberty, so it is in perimenopause. What are some of the symptoms that you get? Well, the symptoms are all over the place. You may start to have acne. You may get breast tenderness. You may start to have irregular periods, which are very common. You may start to show some hair loss, lose scalp hair. You may start to have sensitive bladder, loss of libido, vaginal dryness. There's a whole host of things that could be perimenopause. Now, I asked the question a moment ago, when does it start? Well, I mentioned it's about transition. It's not about age. But just so you know the range of what can happen, menopause itself, that final menstrual period, can happen in general, it happens at about age 51. But for about 5 to 10% of women, it will happen before age 45. And for about 1 in 100 women, it will happen before age 40. So what happens is the symptoms start, remember, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 years before that. And so you could be in your late 30s, early 40s, and start having some of the symptoms I'm talking about: bloating, breast tenderness, sensitive bladder, and a variety of other things, and all of that could be perimenopause. And I can tell you why this is so important, because so many women that I see will come in and they have already been to a cardiologist because of heart palpitations. They will have been to a psychiatrist because they're having foggy memory or mood changes, or they suddenly start to get very anxious or a little bit sad, or they may find themselves a little bit more edgy, a little bit more bitchy than they have been in the past. It's just like, who is this? I don't even know who I am. So that kind of behavior. So they're seeing a mental health person for that. They may go to a urologist because they have a sensitive bladder. And you can see how this goes on and on and on. And people are going to multiple places trying to sort this out. It can be very confusing and very distressing. And it can affect you in so many ways because it can affect you in your work, because it's hard to be effective. You're not sleeping well. You're having a situation where you are forgetting stuff or forgetting to turn stuff in. I had one patient, Sally, I know, she had worked on a project a long time. She had a big assignment. She did the whole thing, and she said, I forgot to turn it in. So stuff like that can happen. And I saw a patient today who was telling me that she was having more anxiety and she was feeling more sad, and sometimes for a day, day and a half, a month, she was having to even just get in bed, and it was hard for her to just function in her normal activities. So all of these kinds of things could be part of perimenopause. Now, from a practical point of view, how do you know? Well, what happens is that you start to have a situation where your periods get irregular, as I said, and when your periods are generally 7 days off or so, consistently, that tends to be early perimenopause. And then as your periods start to get like every 2 months, like every 60 days or more apart, then you're getting within 1 to 3 years of menopause. So all of that is what you can expect. And so what you have to do about it is to really talk to someone, get some treatment to help the symptoms, to maybe regulate your cycle and to get you back into hormonal balance. And if you're trying to figure out if you're in perimenopause where you are, I put in the title of this particular Facebook Live that you can go to menopausequiz.com, take the menopause quiz, and you can go there. It's a free quiz. It takes about 2 minutes, and you'll be able to get an instant score and some things that will help you. Now, I see Angela. Hello, Angela. Welcome, and welcome back. And if you're having all those symptoms except the missed periods, no hormones, it says, do hormones help or no? Okay, so you're having a lot of symptoms, but your periods aren't missed. Well, it depends on what your hormone levels are, because it could be a very bad PMS, and it could be related to that. And sometimes PMS and perimenopause have similar symptoms, and so you do treat them in a similar way. And that could be with hormones that help to regulate the cycle, but it could be with other types of medications as well. So lifestyle things also for all of those symptoms are very important. And what do I mean by lifestyle? Well, eating healthy, eating whole foods. If you don't exercise, if you're sedentary, well, and who isn't today between watching television, commuting to work, sitting at your computer terminal, and all those kinds of things? There's a lot of sitting, and what we really need to do is get people taking action and walking, getting up, walking around each hour from their desk, getting lunch breaks, and they go for walks, maybe with friends, maybe have meetings that are walking meetings, and so forth, and then controlling sleep. Now, here's Mary. Welcome, Mary. She says, I take estrogen and progesterone. Well, I think that's good. Estrogen and progesterone can be very helpful for the symptoms of perimenopause. It's one of the common treatments, because what's happened is you have estrogen levels and progesterone levels that are totally balanced, and then what happens is in perimenopause they get completely out of balance. And of course your brain is responding to hormones that are no longer balanced, and when that happens, mood swings happen. And remember, estrogen is responsible for increasing the serotonin in your brain, which helps you to feel good. It helps with your sleep, which helps you to feel rested. And of course, if you feel rested, you're going to have a better memory. And all of those kinds of things estrogen is affecting. So when they get out of balance, all of those things go wrong. The periods get wacky and so forth. it can affect your libido and you can just not be interested. Well, that's a bummer, but it can be also reinstated with the proper hormonal balance if that's the underlying reason. There are a lot of reasons why people have less desire or less libido. And at some point in the future, we'll be doing Facebook Live. We'll be talking about sexual function, and I have a whole approach to that. It's called the Better Sex Blueprint, and we can talk a little bit about that. And a lot of my things that I've done are in my book. It's a best-selling book called The Estrogen Window. And this book does spell out how your hormones change, how hormones affect your brain, your breast, your heart, your bladder, and every part of your body, because hormones are definitely going to most every cell in your body. Now, here is Carol. Welcome, Carol. Nice to have you back. When should a female be put on estrogen? Okay, well, it really depends on the person and for what. When people's cycles start getting irregular around the time of perimenopause, which is our focus here today, well, then what ends up happening is that is a time when many times women are put on it. But if you've been through menopause, and that's a whole different story, you try to get started on hormone therapy closer to the time of menopause rather than further away, within the first 10 years of menopause. Now, one of the things that happens in perimenopause is that fertility changes, because you can imagine that as your cycles get irregular, they're getting irregular because the number of eggs that are remaining in the ovary are fewer, and those fewer eggs are kind of the last ones that are available, and they're more resistant to the hormones that stimulate egg release. So estrogen levels will tend to get lower, and because there's no ovulation, progesterone doesn't happen, because the way it happens in the body is that the hormone FSH, it's a pituitary hormone, stimulates the ovary. The ovary then makes estrogen. Then the estrogen in turn turns off the FSH, and when the egg releases, it releases when the follicle opens, and the follicle is a little cyst that holds the egg in it. When that opens and let the egg out, ovulation, then progesterone starts to be produced. So all of that comes from the ovary. Now, what happens is in perimenopause, the FSH is trying to tell the ovary to make an egg, but the egg is not responding. And as a result of lack of response, the estrogen doesn't come back to tell the FSH it's doing its job, stop. So the FSH just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And as a result, that's one of the blood tests that we check to see if you are in perimenopause. Mary Kay, welcome. Says you're saying that glad to hear you are pro-estrogen. Menopause is an estrogen deficiency disease. I couldn't imagine my life without bioidentical hormones. Okay, well, let me just say menopause is estrogen deficiency, but menopause is not a disease. Let me just differ a little bit. It's a condition, and menopause is something that if you live long enough, you go through. So if everybody goes through it, it's not a disease, but I understand what you're saying. But it is a condition, and it's a life-changing one. And you have to remember that in 1900, the average age that women lived was, about 48 years. That was the average age. It's hard to imagine that short a time ago. That was the average lifespan for women. And today, women are living on average about 82, 83, somewhere in there. And menopause typically happens around age 50, 51. As I said, 5 to 10% of women is going to happen before 45. But so you're living a third of your life after menopause. But hormones can make your life a lot easier. Now, hormones aren't for everybody, and we'll talk about this in another time, because some people are can't take them, or some people won't take them. But for the majority of people, particularly if they start them early, hormones are not only beneficial, but they're safe. So with perimenopause, the most important thing really is to understand what's going on with your body. You want to understand what's happening and to get reassured, because a small subset of women will have heart problems or will have specific bladder problems and so forth. And so you want to make sure that you talk with your healthcare provider so that you're not caught off guard by something that is sneaking up on you. But it is important to realize that there's a whole spectrum of symptoms that we call perimenopause, and that package together is very life-changing. And the thing that's interesting, I think, is that, when you're about to go through puberty, most people will talk to their mom or an older sister or their pediatrician, or somebody says, hey, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get breasts. You're going to have periods. They tell you about tampons, or they tell you about pads and stuff like that. But when women are going to go into menopause and they're going to have perimenopause, nobody has the menopause chat. They don't talk. And so as a result, a lot of people go through it kind of confused or not really expecting things to happen. I think it's very important to know what could be happening so that you are not caught off guard. Other questions you'd like to ask, this would be a great time to do it. And if you, as it says in the title of this, if you want to have a insight into where you are, you can go to Menopause Quiz. Take the free quiz. Takes 2 minutes. You'll get results will come to your inbox in just a few minutes, and you'll get some tips that will be helpful too. Mary Kate, thank you very much. Tammy says, how long do you go through hot flashes with menopause? Well, hot flashes, we talked about last time. We did a whole Facebook Live on that, but let me address that for you, because hot flashes are a lot of people think the hot flashes are menopause, but in fact, they start in perimenopause, and the heat really goes up about 2 years to 3 years before menopause happens, before the final menstrual period. So if you're starting to all of a sudden, whoa, it is really hot in here, and I just can't believe it, well, chances are then you're getting closer and closer to menopause. Unfortunately, we don't have a marker that's going to say menopause is going to happen at this time on that day. We don't know exactly. So it's defined as 1 year after your final menstrual period, or if both your ovaries are removed, you go into menopause at that time. Even if your uterus is left in, if your ovaries are out, you're in menopause. If your uterus is removed and you don't have a period, but your ovaries are left in, you're not in menopause at that time, you just don't have periods. Anna, welcome. Nice to have you here. Have you heard of menopause migraine headache? Well, I'm still getting them when let's see if we can get this to go up. Well, you're still getting menopause migraines. Well, yes, there are menopause migraines. And what happens is estrogen in the perimenopause is a blood vessel dilator. It's really good for the blood vessels, and it puts out a hormone called nitrous oxide, and that causes blood vessels to dilate in the brain and in the heart and other places. And so what happens is when these irregular periods, you have these drops in estrogen, and people get spasms and migraines. And so they are common and often can be controlled with hormone therapy and with controlling the evenness of the hormones, so something's not just dropping down. Karen, hi. Karen Newman is saying, I'm 62 and still going through all those hot flashes. All I can say is bummer for that, but it's not weird. a subset of women, a lucky about 7.5% or so, are going to go through symptoms, and it can last for quite some time. And as a consequence, they can last that long. But there's so many treatments for hot flashes. We went over it. If you go back and look at the last Facebook Live I did last week on hot flashes, you'll see we talked about a lot of things that you can do. And if hot flashes is your main thing that's worrying you, you can go to hotflashgift.com and get a free download of 10 mistakes that women make that trigger hot flashes. But it's nothing odd. If you're having hot flashes after 10 years, that's not weird. It's not pleasant, but it's not like something terribly wrong, assuming that they've been happening all along and these are the hot flashes. People can have hot flashes for, other reasons than menopause. It could be medications they're taking, or it could be other medical conditions. But if you've just always been having hot flashes and they're still hanging around, well then don't think it's weird or something pathologic or something, but it's just unpleasant as the dickens. That's for sure. Anna, thank you very much for your comment. Joe Allen says, what would be the best hormone replacement vitamin? I'm not sure I understand that question, because if you could restate it somehow, because hormones, of course, are not vitamins. Vitamins are, they're essential things that our body doesn't make that we have to take. And I don't quite understand your question. They're really not vitamins that are hormone replacement. Now, there are some vitamins that women take in menopause that can be helpful, and I think women should be taking multivitamin in the perimenopause. I think omega-3 fatty acids are really a helpful thing to take. The perimenopause is a time of estrogen going down, and so calcium can come out of your bones, and you might want to look at taking calcium supplements, or being darn sure in your diet that you understand how much calcium you're taking. Because if you don't take enough calcium, you're going to lose calcium for your bones, and that's going to put you at risk for osteoporosis. And vitamin D is also very important to check. I live in the Boston area, and we are having great long days now, but in the winter it's a pretty short daylight, and as a result a lot of women have low vitamin D, and that affects your bones. But it can also affect hot flashes, put you at risk for low vitamin D can put you at risk for certain cancers, particularly breast cancer, maybe pancreatic cancer, muscle strength, and a whole lot of other things. So check that out. I hope that answers your question. If not, just ask it again. I'm happy to try and address it. Angela, thank you for joining. I have stopped my cycles for 6 months, then resumed for a few months, and then stopped again. Is that normal during perimenopause? Yes, welcome to perimenopause. That is exactly normal. See, it has to go a full year to be menopause. If you go for 6 months, what's happening is you're getting closer to menopause. If you have like one, or if you as you get like more than 60 days apart, means that you're typically within 1 to 3 years of the final menstrual period. And as they start to get further and further apart, it means that menopause is coming closer and closer. But that's totally normal, and don't worry about that. It's annoying because you don't know it's coming, and then you think, I'm finally done, and then there it goes again. So reset your clock, Angela, because you got to wait 12 more months. 12 more months to find out you're in menopause. Now, if the period starts not just a period here and there, it starts getting to be wacky, and you start having dribs and drabs and bleeding here and there, and then that has to be looked at and make sure there's nothing problematic going on with the uterine lining. Angela, yes. Do you recommend any herbs that work for these symptoms? Well, I always say everything works for some people and nothing works for everyone. But for herbs, there are a lot of them that are out there. And I think that the best ones I like are the soy supplements. I like them. I think they're effective. Soy foods are really good. I mean, those are eat the whole food. And in that one, you're talking about edamame, the beans. You can steam them, or I'm talking about soy milk, or I'm talking about tofu. There's a lot of ways that you can do it. I actually have a whole book called The Soy Solution for Menopause. I give recipes in there, and there's all ways of taking soy. If you're going to take the supplements contain generally one of two things, diadzine, diadzein, or genistein, genistein, and genistein is the most effective for your hot flashes. But some women do well with black cohosh. That's a very common one. Others use clover, which has actually got phytoestrogens or plant estrogens similar to soy. But there are a whole host of other supplements. Evening primrose is helpful to some people, but not as effective as others. And there are a lot of products on the market that are just groups of products in them. There's iCool and Estroven. There's a whole host of OTC or over-the-counter products that are available. What I recommend you do is try one. Try it for about 3 months. If it doesn't go to where you want it to, then try another one. But don't try a handful of different ones, because you will never know if one of those helped you and the other ones weren't necessary. And then you won't know. You'll just have to keep taking them and buying them all. And that can be expensive and may or may not ultimately solve your problem. Angie, you are very welcome, and thank you for joining me. Other questions that you have, I'd be happy to answer them now. We'll go for a few more minutes, and if you have any last questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you. My goal is to get as many people as we can to join each week. I want to get a movement going here, ladies, because here's the deal. You get about 8 minutes on average with your doctor. I've already spent with you, nearly 30 minutes. And you can see that it's hard to get questions answered when you don't have enough time. And that's why I'm here, is to help you get the information, because I want you to figure it out so you don't have to tough it out. That's really my goal for you. And I got into this. I started as a fertility specialist. I did one of the first in vitro fertilizations in the country. And when my wife found out that she had to have surgery that threw her into early menopause, before only about 7 months after the Women's Health Initiative, the WHI study, came out saying that estrogen, and it was incorrect, caused breast cancer or heart disease and other things, her doctors were reluctant to help her because they didn't know how to help her. They were afraid and concerned. So I'm very passionate about this, and I want to get as much information as I can to women to help them. So each week, bring a friend, bring your questions, and we'll cover different topics. There's so many things to talk about. And I will say again, if you haven't read it already, really take a look at the Estrogen Window. It's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. It was, and it is amazingly chock full of understandable information to help you in this transition. It's got a lot of stuff in it. And if you haven't taken the menopause quiz, go to menopausequiz.com. Take advantage of that. And the good thing is you'll kind of know how much your symptoms are affecting you. You'll know a better idea about what's normal, what's not, what to expect, and so forth. All right, well, we're going to wrap up here. Let me just say that next week, I'm going to focus on early menopause, because there's a whole group of people that are go into menopause early. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be out of town next week. I'm going to be in Florida. I'm going to be speaking at the Force meeting, Facing Our Fears of Genetic Cancer Empowered. It's a group which deals with the BRCA gene, and it's a whole group of women that are dealing with early menopause. And there's so many women and so much misunderstanding. I want to address that specifically. So I'll be speaking to you during the meeting next week from Florida. So bring your questions, bring your friends, and I look forward to seeing you. Angela, thank you. I'm glad that you got the book. Listen, if you do get the book, write a comment in Amazon and let other people know that it's helpful to you, because it's so important to get the message out. All right, well, until then, remember, it's better to stay well than to get well. So stay well, and I look forward to seeing you at Ask Dr. Mache next week, 9 o'clock Eastern. Take care.